Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go after the left, we go after the right, we go after the middle and independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go after the left, we go after the right, we go after the middle and independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go after the left, we go after the right, we go after the middle and independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, March 27th, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we do get started, this is a family-friendly podcast, so we do try to watch our language on How the Frack We Got Here. However, we are giving a viewer discretion warning that some things we may show may be of the graphic nature, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. Do have to apologize, guys. We are starting a little bit behind because Mother Nature is... that did not happen. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. Yeah, let's make you down here. Cool. We'll do that. We'll put you down there. Had to get my comments field going so I can see what you guys are doing because we are broadcasting on Facebook and on Instagram right now. So, with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. This week has been crazy. Not only with the weather, because the weather right now, especially if you're in the South, Mother Nature is not playing. Hence the reason why we had to kind of delay us actually starting the podcast because Mother Nature woke a lot of people up, especially with the rain of the thunderstorms today. So again, apologies for starting late, but we're going to go and get into it. Let's first start with the crazy laws that are being passed, especially the one in Georgia.
Election law. President Biden calling it Jim Crow in the 21st century. Governor Kemp behind closed doors signing the bill into law last night. A state lawmaker arrested, knocking on his office door, asking to witness the signing. Georgia, one of more than 40 states now moving to set new limits on voting under the guise of election security, despite no credible evidence of widespread election fraud. Opponents argue it will only suppress the vote, especially in black communities. ABC's Steve Osunsami is in Atlanta.
It's the new election law that many tonight are calling racist, signed by the same Georgia governor who refused to go along with the wildest rumors of widespread fraud in the last two elections where the Democrats won. And here's what he's saying now.
There's no doubt there were many alarming issues with how the election was handled.
There are now two photos defining this pivotal moment, one with the white Republican men signing the law, and another with a lone black woman getting arrested for trying to get in the room. State Representative Park Cannon is a Democrat, and she was put in jail after she refused to stop knocking on the governor's door.
There is no reason for me to be arrested. I am a legislator. Do not touch me.
U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock is the pastor of her church and was at the jail when they bailed her out.
What we have witnessed today is a desperate attempt to lock out and squeeze the people out of their own democracy.
Those popular outdoor ballot drop boxes that were available 24/7 can now only be used inside an early voting location and only while that location is open. You'll now need to provide a license or an ID number to vote by mail. And it's now a crime in Georgia for anyone other than a poll worker to offer food or water to people waiting in the endless lines they often see in the large cities. Outside the State House, black and brown voters are screaming that this is voter suppression. The president today called the new rules Jim Crow in the 21st century.
They passed a law saying you can't provide water for people standing in line while they're waiting to vote. You don't need anything else to know that this is nothing but punitive, designed to keep people from voting.
Let's bring in Steve Osunsami joining us from Atlanta. And Steve, Georgia's not alone here. States across the country are now trying to tighten voting laws.
That's right, Whit. There are Republicans in dozens of state houses across the country who are working on similar measures. And let's talk about the politics for a second. Most of these measures are aimed at the early vote and the mail-in vote, when you look at this state, broke heavily for Democrats in November and January. Whit?
And this debate only heating up across.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely asinine that Georgia, because their claims of voter suppression, their claims of mass election fraud, the claim that even Donald Trump from his wonderful place in Florida is still crying about how the election was stolen from him, that Georgia's state legislature, including their governor, Brian Kemp, have all decided to induce what I like to call it's the new Jim Crow law. It's Jim Crow all over again. For all those who don't know, Jim Crow laws were used to suppress minorities across the South, not just in Georgia, but also in Alabama and Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, Mississippi. I could keep going on, but the entire South, if you're born in the South, you know about what Jim Crow is. This law is no different. The simple fact of the matter is, this is aimed at minorities because, let's be honest, the turnout for the special election, which got in Joel Osmer and got in Reverend Warnock in, was the sole reasons why Georgia flipped the state, why Georgia actually voted Democrat and actually elected its first black senator in 50 years. Again, this is voter suppression. Think about what the rules are applied to here. A ballot box can only be used at certain hours. Let's be honest, a lot of people, especially in Georgia, are either in the rural communities or in the metropolitan areas, Atlanta being one of them. So again, it makes no sense that this is targeted at people, especially about the vote by mail, where you need ID or a driver's license. Again, most minorities don't actually have a license or either have a license or identification, only because the polling places, which were actually used for driver services, were actually cut by the state. So again, this is all leading to, and I kept saying this, and I'm going to keep saying this, guys, this was all leading to the midterms. Now, keep in mind, the midterms are not that far off. They're next year. The midterms are basically voting for the House and the Senate. Keep in mind, as it stands right now, the Democrats have a slim majority. They have an overwhelming majority in the House. They have a very slim majority in the Senate because of the 50-50 tie and Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker. Right now, Republicans are just basically trying to unseat them because they didn't like the fact that Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill got passed. They weren't supporting that, but that bill got passed to reconciliation, which means that it did not need Republican assistance for it to get passed. Now, because the Voting Rights Act is on the table, which again needs to happen anyway, just because of voting like this, because of voting laws like this. This is what's going to actually shape our democracy, and this is why I keep saying your vote is important. Your vote is so important Because again, if your vote wasn't important, why are they making so many laws to prevent you from actually voting? Or sit there and say, because again, to repeat this, guys, there is no certifiable amount of evidence that has been found that any voter fraud has actually happened in this previous election. There's no evidence of this. And yet Republicans swear by it. Even Brian Kemp now swears by it. Because nothing says equal opportunity like a whole bunch of white men signing a paper talking about new voting laws. Nothing screams equal opportunity, I guess. And shout out to the lone Democrat legislator who decided to really, get to Brian Kemp and say, no, you need to explain yourself while you're signing this. But Georgia, I will say this again, Georgia's just like Texas. Texas, I hope you remember about Ted Cruz. Georgia, I hope you remember about Brian Kemp. Because when they're available because when re-election happens in those states, I hope both those states have a very long memory of what those two individuals have done. But it is so crazy that now they're talking about keep in mind, this is all toward the midterms, folks. This is all set up to where they're trying to make, instead of making voting easier, they're making voting difficult. Because like I said about voting, this honestly should have been done a long time ago. Election day should be a federal holiday, which means that you shouldn't have to decide between working and trying to vote. At the same time, elections should be made available in any way. Mail by early voting, mail-in voting, going to as many open areas as humanly possible. I mean, we should be focusing more on making it easier to vote than trying to restrict those to vote, because Republicans didn't like the fact that Democrats won the game, so now they're changing the rules. We really should not be surprised by this, and I keep saying this. They're doing this all at the local and state levels. And I keep pointing this out. I don't mean to sound like a broken record when I say this, y'all. But the only real way that we can actually change what's going on in the country is we have to stop it. And we have to change it. I shouldn't say stop it. We have to change it at the local and state levels. This is why it's so important who you vote in as alderman, as a council person, as a mayor, as a governor. It does matter who we put into place in these local and state legislatures, because again, they're the ones making the rules now, and the only way we can combat this is that Biden is going to have to probably look into federal overreach, which again, a lot of the states in the South, because they're conservative, don't like government overreach, which is kind of hypocritical because they use government overreach to basically put the rules in their favor. However, Biden did actually have additional things to say about that in his press conference that actually happened earlier this week.
Across the country are working to pass bills that would restrict voting, particularly Democrats fear impacting minority voters and young voters, the very people who helped to get you elected in November. Are you worried that if you don't manage to pass voting rights legislation, that your party is going to lose seats and possibly lose control of the House and the Senate in 2022?
What I'm worried about is how un-American this whole initiative is. It's sick. It's sick. Deciding in some states that you cannot bring water to people standing in line, waiting to vote. Deciding that you're going to end voting at 5 o'clock when working people are just getting off work. Deciding that there will be no absentee ballots under the most rigid circumstances. It's all designed, and I'm going to spend my time doing three things. One, trying to figure out how to pass the legislation passed by the House, number one. Number two, educating the American public. The Republican voters I know find this despicable. Republican voters. The folks out outside this White House. I'm not talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about voters. And so I'm convinced that we'll be able to stop this, because it is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. I mean, this is gigantic, what they're trying to do. And it cannot be sustained. and do everything in my power, along with my friends in the House and the Senate, to keep that from becoming the law.
Well, in order to actually do that, Mr. President, that you're going to have to basically pass the Voting Rights Act. Because what you guys know, the Voting Rights Act was actually just a little bit what I talked about, was that they made voting easier across the states, making voting a federal holiday, enforcing mail-in voting for all states, and that's just a sliver of what the Voting Rights Act actually is. That needs to be passed in order to combat these states that are trying to implement their own voting laws. And again, the one thing I do disagree with the president about in this one is just that Republican governors are appalled by this. I don't see any of them. I haven't seen one Republican governor or mayor come out and sit there and say this is horrible, because it works in their favor. I mean, a lot of their constituents are not a part of the minorities that the law in Georgia is targeting. So of course, I mean, he sat there and says that they're disgusted by this. All I get from the right side is silence. So again, the only way this is actually going to be combated, Mr. President, is the Voting Rights Act must be passed and must be enforced. Pass it the same way that you got the COVID. I mean, you might get it passed without Republican support, but I believe that's going to be the majority of you and Vice President Harris's first initial term. It's just that a lot of the laws that you guys want to get passed and get done is going to have to be without Republican support, and Republicans hate that because they enjoyed that for the last 4 years, and now they're left out of the party. But moving right along, guys, there has been some crazy stuff that has happened in March, aside from the weather. And also I have to apologize if you hear thunder and lightning. Yes. Oh, if you hear thunder and lightning, who hears lightning? If you hear thunder, yes, it's only because we started passing storms. Like I said before, we tried to delay the podcast because at first it was just back to back thunder. It's kind of quieted down now for now, but if you still hear some, rumblings, I apologize. This will not take away from what we're actually doing today, guys, because, rain or shine, the podcast don't stop. But anyway, going into the next part of the story, this itself was crazy. Again, when people say the Confederacy is just heritage, they sound stupid when they're trying to defend it. That's about the best way I can put this up.
Chiefs of the tribes in Africa sold their people into slavery. If it had not been that way, there would not have been any slaves anywhere in America for Robert E. Lee or anybody else to have owned. So don't blame Robert E. Lee. Maybe you should be after your ancestors.
Communism slowly destroys a nation by removing all icons, such as Aunt Jemima's face from pancake mix, Civil War statues, other things like historical school names.
It says in the Bible, Jesus himself never condemned slavery. In fact, he said slaves have an obligation to obey their master.
I understand the connection, the bond, the family, and heritage that you feel is embodied in the name. When the name is so blatantly disrespectful that you choose to downplay the horrific actions that happened under that general, that flag, I humbly ask that the name calling on both sides stop, that we look at history objectively and honestly, that we make room for change.
I heard a lot of racist things as I stood because I think some of you good people thought I was one of you, but I'm not. So I'm here to say that all of this does make a difference. You are speaking from your white culture and your white self. And I ask you, take a deep breath.
The Lee name tied to, as it must be, to slavery is an affront to all students of color that seek an education here. It clearly undermines their self-respect and dignity by conveying for all to see that they are descendants of second-class citizens. From that flows the implication that they too are second-class citizens. It's hard to imagine a more demoralizing tone to set for students seeking to excel.
Y'all, this is over a name. A school that was Robert E. Lee High School is seeking to change the name because, again, Robert E. Lee was a Confederate soldier, and we are seeing a movement to remove Confederate soldiers, statues, busts, things of that nature, from high schools, from city halls, from pretty much everywhere. I'm for it. And it is amazing to me the level of just resistance from white folks. Well, and then in the ignorance, the sheer ignorance that you see is still amazing to me. Where she's going to come up there and say, well, I was taught that Africa sold most of its own slaves, most of its own people into slavery. So don't blame Robert E. Lee. You should probably blame your ancestors. What area of ignorance and white privilege does she get off on? And at the same time, it just goes to show you that, again, they keep on saying heritage. Heritage is a word they hang on for these people. It's all about the heritage. It's all about, well, you're going to take away what I believe in. So you believe in slavery? No. You believe in rebelling against the government? No. You believe in what then? Because your heritage is based off those things. So if you're not if you're not a seditionist and you're not racist and you believe slavery is wrong, maybe it's not your heritage that you're defending. Maybe you don't like the fact that either you're denying yourself of something, or for the simple fact of the matter is you don't like the fact that, again, we're doing what other countries have done. Just like in Germany. You won't see any swastikas or signs of Nazi or any sign or anybody wearing Nazi propaganda or clothing. Why? They banned it. In the same sense that here, there's still people around here who are now proud enough to wear Aryan Brotherhood or KKK or White Nation. Trust me, they're out there, especially in Tennessee. They feel bold enough to wear the stuff to let people know I'm with this. So again, it's a name of a school. Like I said before, the guy near the end of the segment had the most perfect thing to say about it. He said it's a reminder to people of color who come to the school that your descendants were seen as second-class citizens. So that is going to translate as they're being seen as second-class citizens, because we still have the name of a school of a racist person. I mean, that's the most logical sense ever. But again, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because like I said before, it's a school name that needs to be changed. I think that every instance of every Confederate soldier or general needs to be removed. Because again, the Confederacy were seditionists. They didn't want to join the Union. They were trying to overthrow the states at the time. They even elected their own president at one point, just to show how much they didn't want to be a part of the Union at the time. We shouldn't be surprised by that, because no matter how you look at it, there are just some white people that honestly just love to rebel against anything and everything. The whole fact of rebelling apparently gets them off. But moving right along, guys, like I said, some states have been doing some stupid stuff. My home state of Tennessee is no different. Why? Because the douchebag Governor Bill Lee has signed a transgender sports bill into law Friday, requiring students to prove their sex at birth in order to play in middle and high school sports. This is a response to transgender players wanting to play on the teams that they identify by. And the excuse that they're using is that if transgender people play on the teams of the sex they identify with, then this takes away opportunities from women. And in this case, he pretty much says, and I quote, "I signed the bill to preserve women's athletics and ensure fair competition. This legislation responds to damaging federal policies that stand in opposition to the years of progress made under Title IX, and I commend members of the General Assembly for their bipartisan work." Title IX. Title IX is what Betsy DeVos tried to push forward. That is like the worst idea you should actually go with. Title IX? You really want to say Title IX was the best commissionership? No, it was done by Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos is a effing idiot, and even more so, I was so happy to see her go. But again, guys, the whole idea of this was that he's using the original idea of Title IX was supposed to be it was supposed to prohibit sexual-based discrimination of any kind in any school or education program that receives federal money. That's what Title IX initially was for. Betsy DeVos twisted it. Even in the same sense, guys, where again, I make the same argument all the time. The argument I pretty much make, and feel free to say in the comments if you wish, but what's the harm? You already acknowledged that people are transgender, binary, non-binary, cisgendered, and really the list of variants out there. We've acknowledged it. Cool. Nothing against that. I still sleep the same. I still sleep the same. Try saying that 5 times fast. I get the same rest every night. How you choose to live your life without restrictions and without judgment. No problem. This is a problem because I said it in this podcast and my other podcast, Off Limits, that all this is going to lead to is intergender sports. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the fact of the matter is Republicans coming out and saying, we're doing this to protect the fairness of women's sports. Of women. Let me get this straight. The irony of it all is that you guys are going to come out and defend women when you guys have been going over you have been going after women's bodies since Roe versus Wade. But you're going to come out now and defend women and sit there saying, oh yeah, so we're going to make sure you guys have a fair chance to play. No. It's so asinine and crazy because, again, guys, I have been saying this for the longest time. What would happen? Okay, because it was suggested, because my beautiful, intelligent girlfriend, she suggested that, well, why don't the transgenders have a league of their own? Here's what's going to happen. Because I see a lot of schools, especially in the South, will probably try to sit there and do that. They'll try to sit there and say, well, we want the transgenders to play together. We're going to give them their own separate league. I can see that coming. But here's the problem with that. The problem with that is that the NCAA doesn't discriminate. All they see is money. Now, when all they see is money, we should not be surprised what'll happen next is that because they don't care about transgenders, they actually acknowledge them, that the simple fact of the matter is they're going to start looking at these transgender leagues for these people that identify themselves as women, and they're going to give them scholarships. Why? Because championships bring money. Championships brings money. Money brings boosters who bring more money, and the college is better off for it. College sports is more profitable than the NBA, the NHL, and the NFL combined. Should not be surprised by that. So, in essence, by giving the trans athletes a bigger spotlight, it possibly does mean that scholarship money is going to go to them and less to other sports. And then what are you going to say? Because you can't force the college to sit there and say, well, you guys should give more chances toward women's sports, even though the transgenders players are better. Where's the fairness in that? Again, the only thing, and this is just me, feel free to say different in the comments if you wish, I think it's all going to head to intergender sports. That's eventually what's going to have to happen. Unfortunately, that's the best way you can put it. Intergender sports is going to have to happen because, again, either that or you're going to have 2 leagues or 3 leagues: men, women, and transgenders. Those two are the only 2 possible solutions that you have out of all this. But like I said, Tennessee is not the only person. Tennessee is not the only state to turn around and do the same thing. Unfortunately, Arkansas is as well. The governor there, Governor Hutchinson, signed a bill on Thursday, again, banning transgender athletes from joining female sports teams. I signed this, quote unquote, I signed the law as a fan of women's sports from basketball to soccer, including many others in which women compete successfully. This law simply states that female athletes should not have to compete in a sport against a student of the male sex where the sport is designed for women's competition. Come again? Because wait. This law simply states that female athletes should not have to compete in a sport against a student of the male sex when the sport is designed for women's competition. And of course, they use the catchphrase, "This will help and promote fairness in women's sporting events." Wait. Hang on a second. I love this part where they sit there and go, this law simply states that female athletes should not have to complete the sport that, I'm sorry, let me get this right for clarity. This law simply states that female athletes should not have to compete in a sport against a student of the male sex where the sport is designed for women's competition. What sport is really designed for women's competition? The rules in basketball haven't changed for men or women. The rules in football, because there is a women's football league, that hasn't changed for men or women. Soccer, the rules in soccer or European football, that hasn't changed. The rules haven't changed for men or women. So exactly what sport was designed for women's competition that needs to be modified because they're women? Again, it's a cop-out. It really is a cop-out. That's what these states are doing. Just from voting rights to suppressing transgender rights, it is completely asinine. And the reasoning behind it is just effing scary. But moving right along, guys, of course, President Biden had his first news conference this week. And here's just the highlights from what happened from that conference.
I indicated that I hope to get 100 million shots in people's arms in my first 100 days. We met that goal last week by day 58, 42 days ahead of schedule. Now today I'm setting a second goal, and that is we will, by my 100th day in office, have administered 200 million shots in people's arms. Those who are coming across the border who are unaccompanied children, we're moving rapidly to try to put in place what was dismantled, as I said. For example, of all the children who are coming across the border, over 70% are either 16 or 17 years old. We're not talking about people ripping babies from mother's arms or little 3-year-olds standing on the border. Less than, I think it's 1.5% fall in the category of the very young. The idea that I'm going to say, which I would never do, if an unaccompanied child ends up at the border, we're just going to let them starve to death and stay on the other side. No previous administration did that either, except Trump. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Deciding that you're going to end voting at 5 o'clock when working people are just getting off work. Deciding that there will be no absentee ballots under the most rigid circumstances. It's all designed, and I'm going to spend my time doing 3 things. 1, trying to figure out how to pass the legislation passed by the House, number 1. Number 2, educating the American public. The Republican voters I know find this despicable. Republican voters. The folks out outside this White House. I'm not talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about voters. Voters.
Have you decided whether you are going to run for re-election in 2024? You haven't set up a re-election campaign yet, as your predecessor had by this time.
My predecessor needed to. My predecessor. Oh, God, I miss him. No, an answer is yes. My plan is to run for re-election. That's my expectation. No American president ever backed down from speaking out of what's happening in the Uyghurs, what's happening in Hong Kong, what's happening in country. That's who we are. The moment a president walks away from that, as the last one did, is the moment we begin to lose our legitimacy around the world. It's who we are. So I see stiff competition with China. China has an overall goal, and I don't criticize them for the goal, but they have an overall goal to become the leading country in the world, the wealthiest country in the world, and the most powerful country in the world. That's not going to happen on my watch.
Okay, so of course we see a lot from President Biden, exactly what he was going over, various things. Of course, he did talk about the voter repression, the new voter laws. Of course, his response behind that, the immigration, in which again a lot of people are questioning, and I find this funny. It's always conservatives, Republicans mostly, are questioning President Biden's response to the border. Keep in mind that he sat there and said that he's not turning anybody away, that he's actually providing food and water and things of that nature to especially children, especially immigrant children, and he's getting lambasted for it, which I'm like, well, Trump was turning people away, even more so sending the army to the border, instead of actually sending immigration lawyers, judges, and FEMA to actually help these people, and Biden has actually went ahead and did that. And of course, there was that small dig at Trump. I miss that guy because, again, it's like, well, by this time he was playing his re-election. Because, again, Trump was trying to stay in office because he knew he was doing a terrible job, but he loved the benefits of what made him president, as far as avoiding prosecution on so many different levels, which now he's kind of been battling the middle of it. But again, we aren't surprised by that. And of course, Biden himself are saying that yes, he will be seeking a second election. He will be seeking a re-election for the next term in 2024. But like I said before, 2022 is really going to be a test for him to see if they'll be able to keep the majority, because Republicans are trying to at least unseat one of those houses. If not the House of Representatives, then definitely the Senate. And trust me, there's nothing more that Mitch McConnell would love to be the Senate Majority Leader again, to be that invisible wall that apparently blocks everything. But moving right along, guys, I did want to speak a little bit about Trump because, unfortunately, he is back in the news. It is, first and foremost, it is so great that he doesn't have Twitter. I don't know what it is. It's like Twitter was like the once all remedy for Trump, for him not to be tweeting every 5 seconds. But anyway, Trump is back in the news because he was actually on Laura Ingalls. If you watch Fox News, Laura Ingraham, who is probably the biggest douche right next to Sean Hannity, he was actually on her show via phone interview and sat there and said that he is defending his supporters who assaulted the Capitol on January 6th, claiming, quote unquote, they pose no threat. The rioters posed no threat. Sure, they destroyed a whole bunch of property. Sure, people got killed, but they didn't pose any threat. He actually said, quote unquote, at the bottom, it was zero threat right from the start. It was zero threat. Look, they went in, they shouldn't have done it. Some of them went in and they are hugging and kissing the police and the guards. You know, they have great relationships. A lot of the people were waved in, and then they were walked in, and then they were walked out. No. I mean, yeah, there were some pictures of some Capitol Police posing with Trump supporters who decided to try to pull a coup d'etat. You're exactly right. Those same officers are fired. He also compared the protest to the Black Lives Matter protests over the summer of 2020, saying that those were violent protests. And this just goes to show you how tone deaf that Dorito truly is. For the simple fact of the matter is, number one, the protests that were led over Black Lives Matter for George Floyd and so many others were met with more police resistance than those at the Capitol. Because I can tell you, every time there's a Black Lives Matter protest, police were in riot gear, armed in riot gear, tear gas and riot shields, and at least had a nice little armada behind them. The ones at the Capitol building on that day of January 6th were nowhere near as armed as those at protest meetings and groups. Again, the disconnect is so real that he's trying to make it seem like I had nothing to do with this, which again, he can still be prosecuted for. Just because he's not president anymore doesn't mean that the top prosecutors can still come back and sit there and say, yeah, you incited the riot, which is fairly obvious. He incited the riot. So he still could come back and still be charged for a conspiracy for that, on top of the already many defending battles he's currently fighting right now. But again, we'll follow that story as it comes along. I did want to talk about Evanston, Illinois, because when we hear about reparations for black people, we all say this at the same time: cut the check. It's very simple to cut the check. But Evanston, Illinois has actually got a different path for reparations, and I think it's great, but at the same time, it's honestly not enough.
Evanston, Will Jones.
Now, that is actually where they're trying to do this, where, again, they're offering, they are actually offering $25,000 in housing assistance for African Americans in Evanston, Illinois. Again, it's a nice start. I say this before, it's a nice start. The thing about it is, guys, like I said before, every time you hear reparations for black people, for descendants of slaves, it's always, how can I put this ever so nicely? It's always interesting. And I say it's interesting because, again, this goes back to people just come out and saying, cut the check. Because, again, there has been a history of payments made. And I want to point this out just because the simple fact of the matter is, a lot of people do not believe that the USA has paid reparations to individuals. We actually have. Very simply put, if I could just blow this picture up, the history of reparations payments, USA many times in the 90s, in the 1990s, 1986, 1985, 1980, and 1971, they've paid, whether it was, like for example, Alaska Natives got $1 billion plus 44 million acres of land back in 71 for a settlement. They paid $81 million to the Klamath of Oregon. They paid $105 million to the Sioux of South Dakota. They paid $12.3 million to the Seminoles of Florida. They paid $31 million to the Chippewas of Wisconsin. They paid $32 million to the Ottawas of Michigan. Again, these are all Native American, for all these are Native American tribes. Aside from, of course, they even gave, even back in the 90s, 1.6 billion or 20,000 each to every Japanese American, because 1990 was a very interesting time for reparations. Again, why does that all make sense? Because, again, if the history of reparations payments made at the time was easily doable back then, keep in mind the last actual payment that was made was 1990. It's very easy for the U.S. It's very easy. It is honestly very easy for the United States to pay. It's the simple fact of the matter is they get down to, well, who was the descendants of black slaves? Who was this? They get down into specifics. And Tariq Nasheed Coates actually began the project to actually show that it is possible to give reparations to black people. But I cannot knock Evanston, Illinois for trying to do at least something. But honestly, in order to give reparations to black people, it has to be something that puts them on equal footing with other races who have already had a 400-year head start. Now, the only way that's going to be done economically is how you actually bring them up to speed. Because let's be honest, white folks had an economic jump off black people. It is now time to basically cut the check. That is the only way that's going to make it right. Now, the amount and things of that nature, that can be somewhat questionable, but at the same time, it still can be done. It's just the fact of the matter is, you're just going to have a lot of people who just don't want to play back, who don't want to pay black people. You have a lot of white folks who are well off that don't want to play back, that don't want to pay, I keep want to say play today, that don't want to pay black people. Tell me I'm wrong. But like I said, guys, moving right along, guys. The United States Postal Service, one of the most honored logistical institutions of our nation, unfortunately is going through a horrible time, and their current Postmaster General is suggesting that in order for us to get better, we honestly have to get worse.
About the future of the U.S. Postal Service. The Postmaster General announced today a cost-cutting plan that he says will save it. CBS's Chris Van Cleve joins us from a post office in Virginia. Good evening, Chris.
Margaret, this 10-year plan aims to take a potential $160 billion shortfall and turn it into profitability, but it could mean frustration for many Americans because the plan suggests slowing the delivery window for first-class mail from 2 to 3 days down to 3 to 5 days. Some post offices would see their operating hours cut, and postage prices are likely to rise. Without these changes, the Postmaster General says USPS will run out of money in less than a decade. The Postal Workers Union says it has deep concern over parts of the plan. Democratic lawmakers call it a non-starter. They want to see Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, a Trump appointee, fired after his moves to slow down mail delivery during the election season, but that is not a quick process. All this is happening as the post office is struggling with record low on-time delivery throughout the pandemic and the holiday season, something that continues to this day. Take this priority mail, it may say 2 days. It took 10 to get from New York to Washington just this week. Margaret?
That should be alarming. It should. Louis DeJoy, like I said before, is a Trump appointee. He basically bought his job because he actually gave to Donald Trump's campaign. Again, guys, this is the same Louis DeJoy that actually did attempt to slow mail during the voting process because so many people were voting by mail in the election last year. Again, guys, this is where I sit there and say this. How is the person who is going to suggest that all mail be slowed down to basically make sure that all mail gets to somewhere delivery, is still going to turn around and say, hey, so the implementations I put in are still not working, so we just have to cut everything else. Wait, what? No, we don't need to cut everything else. We just need to get rid of you. At the same time, Bernie Sanders and many other Democrats have said this, that the UPS needs funding. They actually need a shot in the arm. Of all the places that a lot of businesses, people, and everybody else, because not everybody goes to FedEx and UPS and DHL or any of these other logistical companies. The UPS, the United States Postal Service, is still actually being widely used by everyone. So, if anything, because it is our central mail system, that you think it would be better funded. Because keep in mind, Republicans have been wanting to privatize the United States Postal Service for some time now. And the way that they do that is that they starve it out. Unfortunately, because there's not a bill that's actually put in place to actually give the United States Postal Service a shot in the arm, that's the one thing that kind of needs to happen within this Democratic majority right now. We need to start pushing everything through that we want to get through in order to make sure that we actually see some things survive. Now, of course, I would like to say cut the military bill because that's the first thing. I mean, the military is so much a part of our budget these days that if we even cut 1/10 of the military bill, it would mean dang near $1 trillion to anything else. So, with that being said, guys, aside from that, DeJoy cannot be removed by this to me was also the weirdest law I've ever seen. DeJoy can be appointed by a president, but he can't be fired by a president. He can only be removed by the Board of Governors, which is basically the governors of every state. They have to vote on whether or not to remove LaJoy as Postmaster General, and which at this point there are some governor seats that are unfilled, and until that actually is filled, he unfortunately cannot go anywhere. I still think that is the most asinine law I've ever seen, that you can hire a Postmaster General, but you can't fire him without going to another department. I don't get that, but at the same time, it's not surprising where we still see some everlasting effects of Trump everywhere else. But that also being said, guys, I did want to talk about another story, two updated stories before we get to our feel good news segment. This story we did talk about last year about the young black man that was assaulted by an overprivileged white girl because she thought that he had her phone, in which it turned out to be false, but she wasn't going to let it go.
And an update on a story that we first brought you yesterday.
That's right. New York City police and prosecutors are now investigating that hotel confrontation that saw a woman falsely accuse a teenager of stealing her iPhone. NBC's Kathy Park talked to that boy's father, who captured the whole thing on camera. Kathy, good morning.
Craig, good morning to you. Keon Harold, a noted jazz musician, told me he is still in shock and that the experience has been traumatic for his entire family, especially his teenage son. Harold says he is overwhelmed with response to that video, but appalled that he even had to hit record.
This morning, jazz musician Keon Harold is calling for assault and battery charges against this woman, who's now at the center of a viral confrontation.
Take the case off, that's mine. Literally get it back, please.
I tried to tell her best as I could that he doesn't have your phone.
Harold says he began recording the incident that played out at a New York City hotel where they were staying. He says the stranger wrongly accused his 14-year-old son of stealing her iPhone.
Are you kidding me? You feel like there's only one iPhone made in the world?
No, okay, then show me the. No.
Just a beautiful soul. Him experiencing this is super traumatic.
We see at some point she gets close to you and towards the camera, but then it cuts off. So what happens next?
She tackled my son, trying to reach in his pockets, reach in my pockets.
NBC News does not know what happened before or after the minute-long video and was not able to make contact with a woman who has not been publicly identified. Police did confirm a harassment complaint has been filed, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office says they're thoroughly investigating the incident. Harold is now working with attorney Ben Crump, who is calling for a civil rights investigation into the hotel.
We can't have this double standard in America where young black people are guilty until proven innocent.
The Arlo Hotel says the manager on duty promptly called police regarding the woman's conduct and apologized for the inexcusable experience.
No, he's not leaving. Show me the proof.
The widely viewed footage triggering outrage on social media. New York City's Mayor Bill de Blasio tweeting, "This is racism, plain and simple."
You see two black people?
No.
This case now joining other caught on camera moments, demanding accountability.
And Harold says that the woman's phone was later found in an Uber. He adds that hotel surveillance footage could shed more light on the confrontation from beginning to end, which he says lasted for about 5 minutes.
Now, for all those that don't remember, they actually did a interview. CBS did. Gail Kim did an interview with the person, the white girl in there, Maya Ponsetto, whatever her name was. And of course, we did cover that interview because that woman looked like she came. That little, I don't even want to call her an adult. She was like a little spoiled brat, but she had such a nonchalant attitude toward this. And Gail King actually, and she sat there and said, "Okay, we're done." This was the whole thing. "Okay, you're done. You're done." And I'm like, you're lucky that was teleconference, because I can only imagine every black person looked at Gail Kim like, if you don't go and snatch that little girl, because she just had a non-lackadaisical attitude toward it all, like, what else? It was I was following what other people were saying, and they were being rude. They should have listened to me. That was a place of white privilege, and honestly, you know what? I'm gonna be honest. If someone was trying to tackle my child, I wouldn't care. That's a get up off them moment, and because that's my child, you should feel every parent has the right to defend their children. No problem with that. But again, she should be brought up on charges because of harassment and probably assault and battery. If they do review the footage, and she did tackle the son. Because again, he's a 14-year-old boy. He could have easily overpowered her. But again, that's those things that go through your head as far as, if I do this, action will be held against me. If I do nothing, will I be hurt? So I get what the father and the son had to do at that time. But also, I'd be suing the crap out of the hotel personally. Because the hotel and the manager are the ones, the manager should have sat there and said, "Okay, well, I'm calling the police and you are not going to touch them. I'm going to call the police and they can sort it out." Because at that point, they said, well, he promptly called the police. Well, in the video that was shown, especially the one we did on our podcast, the hotel manager was like, "Okay, can she just see the phone? Can she just see the phone? Can she just do this?" You're basically catering to her because she's coming out of nowhere and saying, "You have my phone." Not thinking about the simple fact of the matter is that the Uber she was sitting in is where the phone was actually there. And of course, accusing another person because someone, as she says, someone said that they saw him with the phone, which I find amazing because if she was in an Uber previously, and yet somehow this young man coming down the steps of a hotel she was just entering happens to have her phone, the phone magically just travels from her pocket in the cab to this young man's phone. Yeah, I'm calling BS on that. But again, we'll follow that story as it develops. And finally, I did want to talk about this story about universal basic income. Yes, it is possible. Yes, it needs to happen. I have sat there and said this because we are still not in a place to where we can get back to some sense of normal. Let's be honest, we are not going to get back to what we consider normal. The normal that we knew pre-coronavirus is gone. There's going to be a lot of jobs out there that are simply not going to come back just because companies have learned to adapt in this new world that we're in. So a lot of companies have adapted, which means that certain jobs are just lost forever. And we're getting to the point where automation is starting to take over in many other industries. Universal basic income is going to be needed because, again, Americans can't get paid if they can't find work. And I understand that there's jobs out there, but there are a lot of crappy jobs at low wages, i.e. the South. But anyway, there was a city back then that was doing an experiment, a universal basic income, to see how that would help improve a certain group of people living in a certain city, and come to find out that it thrived. So now they're taking that very same experiment of universal basic income and applying it to residents in Oakland.
California made headlines for becoming the first city in the U.S. to successfully test the idea of guaranteed basic income. And now Oakland, California has followed suit. Earlier this week, city officials announced that their own program is in an effort to find solutions to rising poverty and inequality. Beginning this spring, 600 low-income families will receive $500 a month for at least 18 months with no strings attached. So for some more insight on this, we are joined by Oakland's Mayor, Libby Schaff. Thanks you so much for joining us. So, people will be familiar, maybe they won't be, but with the first time a similar program was rolled out, it was in Stockton. It was only recently that we got the results of how that program went, and it was quite successful. There were a lot of high points, including the fact that there was an increase in full-time employment amongst the individuals and families who received that money. So I'm curious about how things got rolling where you are. Were you watching the program in Stockton, waiting for the outcome? To see if it could be something that you could implement there?
Yes, absolutely. Last summer, the mayor of Stockton formed something called Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, and I was proud to be a founding member. So I pledged last summer to start a pilot in Oakland similar to Stockton's. Now, we are focused on families that have a child living there. We are focused on closing the racial wealth gap. And we're also experimenting with a geographic concentration. But we are going to be part of a large body of evidence. Mayors across the country are engaging in guaranteed income. We know that poverty is complex, but this is a simple solution. And we believe its time has come to become federal policy.
Mayor Schaff, your program is a little different from some of those others that you're referencing that are popping up around the country because it does focus on people of color. Give us some insight into your constituents and what their basic needs and requirements for eligibility are, and how will this program ultimately support your community?
Well, this is for families, and we are focused on families of color, people of color, because there is such a racial wealth gap. In Oakland, white incomes are 3 times that of the median black income. Nationally, the asset wealth gap is 10 times. So we want to close that racialized disparity in poverty. And honestly, every family should thrive. We saw from Stockton not only higher employment rates coming from guaranteed income, but also reduced anxiety, depression, and other impacts on wellness, things that keep people from actually getting out of poverty. We know from even the stimulus check experiences in our post-COVID world that poverty is complicated, and we don't need another government program or website. People need money. This is the best way to get people out of poverty. And we as a nation should have as our value that families should not suffer from poverty. And poverty is not a personal failure. It is a policy failure.
And she's exactly right. I do like the fact, like I said before, the city of Stockton was the first city to actually do the universal basic income experiment, and now Oakland, being a much bigger city, is going to take on 600 people in order to give them $500 every month. Now, keep in mind, this is what universal basic income is designed to be. It's designed to be a measure to, again, cover the income gap, because we still haven't got it together about the employment rate, the minimum wage rate. We still have not yet seemed to get above $15. We are still at $7.30 when we should have been really at this point $23 and some change by now, just to reflect the current market and things that we're sitting in. But universal basic income does help, and we've seen that with the city of Stockton, that those same people that were receiving $500 a month were able to, be happier, their mental health improved, divorce rates actually dropped, because let's be honest, money, if you don't think money affects marriage, and my friend, you have never been married. So again, child grades improved, behaviors improved, because again, when you actually, and let's just be honest, when you are well off, everything else goes better. Your mental health is better, your relationships are better, and a lot of people are actually able to save, which they keep on talking about. I said before, poor people can't save, because again, they're paying more for higher things, but their paychecks haven't changed. So again, the fact that they were able to save, restart 401ks, actually do family planning for vacations again, this was all based because they were given the tools that were needed to thrive, not just to survive. And again, I can see it's also being successful in Oakland with these 600 families, because $500, an extra $500 a month goes a long way to these bills and things of that nature. That's the reason why a lot of people who are seeing unemployment benefit assistance that were honestly getting an additional $600 at one time on top of their benefits were able to at least thrive. Now, they didn't more than survive. Some of them even thrived in that time period. Now, again, this is why I say universal basic income has to become a thing, because, like I said before, automation is taking over a lot of jobs. A lot of jobs that were here before the coronavirus will not return. Some people may find out that they're working from home permanently. Some people may find out that because of some idiots, you have to go back into the office. But that being said, guys, it's just one of those things that I just sit there and go, we have to find different ways of helping people, aside from raising the minimum wage, aside from universal basic income. There are things here that we need to discuss, because right now, in order for the American economy to be better, its people has to thrive. Because you base it off capitalism anyway, and I have been saying this, when you give money to the lower class and you tax the rich and you tax the corporate rate, the corporate tax rate used to be as high as 39%. It needs to be shot right back up there. There needs to be a wealth tax on the rich, because they actually got richer during the pandemic. There needs to be a wealth tax. That's like saying me, if I won the lottery overnight, and let's just say, the current Powerball lottery is like 238 or something. So what? You might get 238 taxes, things of that nature. You might get 99 to 100 million. I'm not greedy. 99 to 100 million was more than I had beforehand. And again, that means that puts me in a different tax bracket. Would I pay taxes on that? Absolutely. You know why? Because no rich person ever paid taxes and got broke. Name one. Because I can tell you right now, like I said before, it's the whole thing of when we did those things and gave the middle and lower classes money and tax breaks and incentives, the economy thrived. Imagine what it could do now if all those things were implemented. That's all I'm saying. So again, we'll be following that story and the experiment of the universal basic income, because, I have yet to see a negative impact from it. So the last thing I got, guys, before we get to our feel good news segment, is a quick blurb. The jury selection for Derek Chauvin. If you don't remember who he is, he was the officer that killed George Floyd by kneeling on his neck to where he basically asphyxiated George Floyd. Well, it seems that they finally got their juror selection of 12 jurors and 2 alternates. So the actual opening statements for the case will start Monday, March the 29th. With that being said, guys, like I said, the whole thing about George Floyd, this was a very high profile case, mainly put because this was the man who became the face, literally. George Floyd became the face of a movement that already added so many other names because of lives lost due to police negligence. I'm gonna call it what it is: police negligence and just their green light to kill black people and get away with it. Now he, of course, is going to be facing trial. Now he does have second and third degree murder, of course, along with his other co-conspirators who are being charged as accessories in separate cases. So, of course, this case will be watched. And like I said before, I know I have this hesitancy because, again, we've seen this happen before with other cases. We've seen this happen with other cases to where, like with Jacob Blake, where no cops were charged with shooting Jacob Blake multiple times, paralyzing him. We've seen this happen with Daniel Prude, in which he was literally and figuratively asphyxiated, and no charges were brought up against that, even though there was a hood put on that man's head, and he was asphyxiated. And again, no charges were filed for the cops. So we've seen previous cases, short of Amber Geiger, which was the only cop that actually saw 10 years for killing Botham Jean, in which the city of Dallas did name a street recently after him. But again, I'm hesitant to sit there and say, well, we see justice getting done, because this is such a clear-cut case of excessive force and murder that will these 12 jurors they found, be impartial? Like I said, everybody has the right to a fair trial. But, unless there is blatant evidence, that everybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty. In this case, there is a crap load of evidence to suggest that Derek Chauvin did knowingly do it, kill George Floyd. But what I'm scared of is just that, are we going to actually see justice for this? Because I still believe, for the simple fact of the matter, that you're not going to see justice when officers are allowed to kill black people and get away with it. That's all I'm saying. But again, we'll look forward to that case as it comes out on Monday, March 29th, as opening statements will be made. And finally, guys, we're going to go ahead and get to our feel-good news segment, because what I usually do say about how the frack we got here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes we cover things that are downright depressing. And on a day like this, where you have Mother Nature playing tennis outside, sometimes it can be a little rough to take. But that's where the Feel Good News segment comes in, because we're basically just trying to bring a little light to your day, restore your faith in humanity a little bit, really allow you to just breathe and relax. Because I know it's the weekend. Some of us are working. Hopefully you have an easy day, and some of us are not working. Which is fine, and some of us are just realizing we have to go back into work after being at home for a year and get accustomed to it because of some idiots. I'm gonna keep pointing that out. Yes, we have to go back into work. That's my job as an IT person, because we have to go back to support a building that nobody's in. Management. But anyway, enough about my life. Let's get these feel-good stories. I did want to talk about this one about a traveling black woman library finds a home. And forgive me if I do not pronounce this name right. I tried my hardest to see if I can really pronounce it right. Aranke Akimoto. And I know I probably dismembered that name. I certainly apologize if I did. Launched a free black women's library on a Brooklyn, New York stop 2 years ago. Now it's actually got a permanent home. Now, what was interesting about the Free Black Women's Library is that it's basically regarding, it's highlighting black athletes, black authors, black poets, and also trying to find also trying to do it to where it actually shows a generation that there is that honestly there is a wealth of knowledge and art and history that, again, that, especially with black women authors, that really isn't shared with the young generation. And that's what Mrs. Akimo, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Let's just say Mrs. A, because I don't want to destroy her name. So Mrs. A's whole point of bringing at least 100 books by black women authors to a place, because at first she just had a stoop where she was actually she had her library where people could read it. It now, because of a GoFundMe project, actually does have a permanent home to where women and little girls can, this is actually her in the picture right here, where they can come and actually read these black women authors in order to inspire them and to, seek their dreams out. And I thought that was cool because I am a book reader. Trust me, I have quite the list of books that I still have yet to really get into, just because of my time being all over the place. But I do love to read. I love all sorts of stories, and I like the fact that there's an individual out there that doesn't want to let that reading die. Because in my mind, the people that got me through, aside from teachers, was reading Rainbow with LeVar Burton, Mr. Rogers and his love for reading. Reading is fundamental. It does so much. And I keep saying this all the time. As an IT person, y'all, reading is fundamental. I'll put it this way. If a lot of people didn't read, I wouldn't have a job. I'm not against that. But at the same time, I love the fact of what Mrs. A has done, to where she has, is able to literally go from a stoop showing her books about female authors, and now actually going to actually getting a place to where they'll be able to come, and where kids will be able to come and actually learn, because there's nothing cooler than learning about a heritage where basically you can find out that it's possible to do it for you to do. It's possible for you to do it too. Why? Representation matters. That's why. But moving right along, guys, I did want to show this story about this teacher. Like I said, for educators, will always hold a special place in my heart. If it wasn't for educators, I would not be the person who I am right now. And this teacher definitely makes sure, because of the pandemic, make sure that his kids are ready to learn by handshake.
Video. It's from a while back. That Memphis school teacher named David Jamison. Well, he welcomed each of his 75 students each day with their own unique handshake routine. Remember all that? Oh, yeah. So funny. He loved it because he said the greetings made every single kid feel special, got them revved up for learning. Well, after a long year in that pandemic shutdown, school reopened. David had to make a few adjustments, though. Each kid still does get a customized greeting, but everybody's wearing a mask. No physical contact. David says he's still able to make an important connection this way. Oh, wow. By the way, he beat COVID himself last year. God. And he said that makes him more excited than ever to get back to doing what he loves. They've gone from handshakes to dances, but they look good.
I mean, just the amount of time it takes to not just choreograph it, but remember
all of them.
And each kid comes up.
I don't care what nobody says. That's coordination. That you gotta remember every kid and their specific dance. I thought that was just cool, just because of the fact of the matter. Like I said, education is everything. And if you have teachers that care about you, that will send you either on a good path. It will always send you on a better path than what you once were. Especially when you have teachers that care about you actually learning and actually, making sure that you excel. And, having a handshake for you start every day, that's cool. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is, Lord knows how many kids he had in that class. Imagine that dude had 30 kids in that class. That's 30 different ways of introduction he's got to remember. That's impressive and also cool as well to see. And also, I do have this last one, guys, for nurses. Actually, that's wrong. I actually have two more. Yes, we actually have 4 feel-good news stories, because after this week, we all needed it, especially for those that have to go into the office because idiots decide to make choices. I'm going to keep pointing that out. But anyway, guys, here's the next story I have about the dancing nurse, which I thought this was cool as well.
To make our day, people like Nurse Anna Wilkinson, who has been dancing into the hearts of patients across the country to lift their spirits. Steve Osunsami, we love this series. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, Robin. Throughout this pandemic, hospitals across this country have had to scramble to meet nursing shortages. And so this morning, we celebrate a nurse who has helped hospitals meet that need and even spent some of her vacation saving lives. She's a nurse on a mission, traveling around the country to hospitals that need her help. Known coast to coast as the dancing nurse, in the PPE, with the slick moves and the healing heart.
I'm not a J-Lo, I'm not a Beyonce, I'm an Anna.
And this morning, she's saying,
Good morning, sunshine!
Anna Wilkinson is an emergency trauma nurse whose home is in San Diego, and she lives by the idea that a smile is really good medicine.
I think people just saw me dancing in my patient's room, and then people started videotaping me. I mean, obviously, I have amazing dance moves.
From kids in Texas to COVID patients in Manhattan, she brings light to dark moments. 31-year-old Eric Kalfas in San Diego says she was the sunshine he needed to recover from a double lung transplant after cystic fibrosis.
I was like kind of down because I had just gotten in. She came in and she just started dancing up a storm and totally changed like my mood around for that evening. And I think it makes a massive difference, and I couldn't thank her enough for it.
But sometimes even the healer needs healing. She fought to stay positive in the middle of so much suffering.
I don't keep track of people I lost. I keep track of people I helped.
Then in December, she too got sick with COVID-19. But as soon as she recovered, the dancing nurse two-stepped right back into the field to help, this time in San Angelo, Texas. And just 3 weeks later came that snowstorm for the record books. She was working in the ER, and both the hospital and her hotel had no clean running water for nearly a week. And she's powering through all of this with a firefighter husband and 2 young children at home in California.
It is rough. You know, you want to be at home. You want to be home with your family and have that hug. Oh, yay! But I can also give that attention to my patients. They don't have anyone, and I can be their person.
But there's no place like home. After 7 weeks on the road, Anna returned home early to surprise her family.
My husband and my kids do not know that I'm home.
So to you, Anna, the traveling nurse who's saving the world with your famous moves, you're our good morning sunshine.
Not even mad about that. Reason why I keep on saying this, doctors and nurses are the real MVPs. For the fact of the matter is that you guys have taken on a lot and are still asked to be taking on a lot, and there is no short of anything except y'all getting y'all student loans wiped out. But then again, that's a whole other story. But we're not going to get into that because we're the Feel Good News segment. The last story I got, guys, is basically about a son deciding to do something great for his mom. Taking her on the trip. She's taking her on a trip. She's taking her on a trip. Words are escaping me right now, and I apologize for that. But let me tell this story about a son who decided that he was going to get his mom to where she wanted to go to on the trip that she wanted to by any means necessary.
Department uncovers a pyramid scheme in which everyone's a winner. Here's tonight's On the Road.
By his own admission, Dustin Vitale is a mama's boy.
Mom, you ready?
He cooks her breakfast every morning.
That's my baby.
And thanks her for the privilege.
Thank you, Mom.
And because Dustin has such devotion.
You're gonna make me cry.
When Gloria was diagnosed with terminal bladder cancer last year, he decided he would try to take her on one last trip. The trip she always dreamed of, to see the pyramids in Egypt. With the whole family, 14 people. Never mind that Dustin works as a middle school teacher in Philadelphia and could never afford the $10,000 to fly everyone. He thought he could raise the cheddar by selling cheesesteaks.
You don't own a restaurant.
Yeah, I got a kitchen though.
There's no way you were going to make enough money selling cheesesteaks out of your house.
Yeah, correct.
So given that, what was pushing you forward?
Just my mom, just a love for my mom.
And so, with his love and her recipe, Dustin started making sandwiches. Sandwiches so big no container could contain. He peddled them to friends and family.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Appreciate your support.
But those people must have told their friends and family too. Because almost immediately, cars started double parking outside his house. Faces he didn't recognize started showing up at the door.
Yep.
Get your mom to Egypt.
I'm trying, man.
Next, word spread on social media.
Oh my God. That's good.
And before he knew it,
good.
folks were lined up down the block. A food truck operator offered his services. And in just 6 weeks, Dustin raised all the money he needed and then some. $18,000.
If she would ask to go to the moon, I would have made that happen as well, so.
The trip is planned for later this year. Gloria says Cleopatra never had it so good.
The love is overwhelming,
She's probably mentally as healthy as she's ever been in her whole life.
Amazing. The healing power of a loving child. Steve Hartman, CBS News.
Never now let me say, guys, nothing's impossible. Especially for that matter. I said he was going to take his mom and 13 other people to Egypt and sat there and as a middle school teacher, like I said, I love that story. The story of the simple fact, and I keep saying this, and I will never stop saying this because I believe in it. Nothing's impossible. I mean, if you look at the fact that a middle school teacher literally made and sold cheesesteaks with fries. Now I'm hungry. Now I really want cheesesteak. But I ignore that part. But the simple fact of the matter, guys, is just that he believed in the fact of what he was doing that was eventually going to get him to where he would like to go. Nothing's impossible. There's just no other way I could say that. That nothing is impossible as long as you put your heart, your mind, your body, your soul into it, devote yourself to it. Honestly, guys, there is nothing impossible that cannot be achieved because that guy is living proof. And yes, social media did help a little bit. Social media did help. Let's just go ahead and be honest about that. But beyond that, guys, that's really all that I have for this podcast. So I thank everybody that watched, that liked, that shared, that started watch parties, because unfortunately that is a thing that's going away as well. Thank you everybody that was on Instagram that's also watching me, because I actually have my phone set up over here to where it gets my good side. For actually watching this show. But before I do get out of here, guys, I do have to do some shameless plugging. As always, I do always want to talk about my buddy Vaughn, Big VZA Dot on Facebook, who will be, and he has let me know, and he's also posted on his social media that he will be back to his live podcast very soon. April the 4th, which is actually not this upcoming Sunday, but the next Sunday, that he will be back to podcasting, and I personally cannot wait, because a lot has happened since his hiatus, and I'm more than sure he's going to have more than enough that he wants to talk about. So I'm actually looking forward to his podcast. I am basically talking about his podcast that can be found on his Facebook page under Big VZA Down on Facebook. I am talking about the VST Intercast, which is a news podcast in which that news can be music, movies, or trailers. I call Vaughn the king of the weird trailers because sometimes he finds trailers that are great, and sometimes he finds trailers that make me question everything. But again, he is my friend. I love him, and it's always an interesting interactive show just like mine. He also has another show for the sake of this podcast, we're going to call it RAF. RAF is like America's Funniest Home Videos if done by WorldStar, which means it's definitely for the adult. Do not bring your kids, but it's meant to make you laugh and enjoy and reset your weeks that we're going to go into, especially those that have to go into work because idiots don't know how to do management. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to say that as much. But anyway, his other shows, like, share, and subscribe as well. He also has another show I'm looking forward to called the Rhythm That's Music Podcast. You can reminisce over the rhythm, in which he goes over albums, whether he selects it or asks us to bring it up, in which we basically go over and talk about it. Now, we're all different on the musical scale, but differences in musical taste lead to great conversations, and that's what Rhythmness is all about. And finally, he has his own beats/selling production podcast, it was more of a pop-up show, really, called Funkin' Around, in which he makes beats from beginning to end. And if you like the beat that he's playing, it is for sale. Yes, the man does make beats for sale. So if you are interested in the beat that he's selling when you hear it, definitely reach out to Vaughn, Big VZA down on Facebook, and he'll give you the details about how to make this possible. Again, all of his shows will be restarting again on April the 4th. Definitely check him out, Big VZA down on Facebook and on all social medias. Now, also for me, I do have my own travel page, guys. Of course, Uncle Obi's Adventures and More. My whole point is that your boy is in the travel business. I'm in the travel business for two reasons. One, I want to make people's lives, I want to make people's dreams come true, giving them the trip vacation they've always wanted. And at the same time, basically save you money, because that's the two things you want on a vacation, right? Getting to where you want to get to and a little bit of money saved in your pocket. That's where I come in, because I basically do the legwork for you. I call around, I look around, trying to find the best deal humanly possible based on where you want to go. You simply give me the date and the destination, and then I'll come back and let you know what I found, and then we simply go from there. Because at Uncle Obi's Adventures and More, we just don't sell adventures, we sell great memories. And at the same time, guys, I do have a $100 referral going on. So if you know somebody that needs to book travel, whether it's down the street, across states, or across the pond, whether it's a hotel, rental car, airfare, all the above, if you refer them to me and they book travel with me, it is $100 in your pocket. Yes, $100 in your pocket whenever someone books travel with me that you sent them to me, because I do believe in paying it forward. So when they book with me, you get paid. Simple as that. And there is no limit on the amount of referrals that you have that you can send, guys. So if you know 2 people, 20 people, or 200 people, and they all book with me, then it's a very good payday for you. Aside from that, guys, the link at the bottom, if you copy and paste that into a browser, will take you to my my link tree, in which it shows the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts: Get Bit, How the Frack We Got Here, and the Off Limits podcast. So, guys, definitely like, share, and subscribe. And if you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. I'm always trying to make the podcast better for everybody to enjoy. I would love to make this my permanent job, because, again, I like the fact of talking about the news and sharing it with others, whether on Facebook or Instagram. So, therefore, like I said, it's one of the things I look forward to, that I believe in, that makes a difference. Also, my podcast schedule is still the same, guys. Every Wednesday from 8:30 to 10 is the midweek edition, How the Frack We Got Here. Every Friday from 8:30 to 10 is, of course, my Get Bit podcast, in which I cover video games, anime, television, movies, things of that nature. And, of course, on Saturday between usually 10 a.m. to noon, but because Mother Nature decided to mess with us, but usually from 10 a.m. to noon is the weekend recap of How the Frack We Got Here. And, of course, a little bit later tonight, between 8 to 10 p.m., we will have a new Off Limits podcast, in which nothing is off limits. It's definitely adult. Do not bring your children, because we will have those adult and real conversations that a lot of people may stray from, but not us. So, like I said before, link at the bottom. If you copy and paste, that will take you to every Facebook and YouTube podcast that I have. Definitely like, definitely share. Let people know about it. You know, if you like the fact that what I do for the news, let other people know about it so we can spread the word. That's all I'm asking you guys to do. But aside from that, before I do get out of here, guys, COVID-19 is real. Please wear a mask. Please do social distancing. If the shot is available in your area, please go ahead and get it, as it will help out a lot to calm down these cases. Because instead of people trying to help people stay home and really stay safe, they'd rather push you into work. Trust me. A lot of companies are doing that. But beyond that, guys, like I said before, I would say, I know I said this earlier, I'll say it again. Thank you, nurses, doctor's aid, nurse aid, those that work in the hospitals, for everything that you do, because you guys have been called to do more than your fair share of everything that's going on. Let me also thank essential people. I hate the term essential worker. I hate the term essential worker as much as I hate the term manager who wants to give pizza parties. Yeah, I don't mean to get anybody triggered, but I hate that as much. Only because it's a corporate buzzword. But they should be calling them essential people, because without those people, they wouldn't keep the lights on for the rest of us. I am talking about those who are first responders, who are educators, who are people that work in customer service, those that work in fast food, those that work out with the public, those that work in grocery stores, gas stations, truck drivers, those that work in logistics like United States Postal Service, UPS, FedEx, DHL, and those also that work in multiple warehouses around the world, not around the world, but around the States, that don't get the same recognition as they should. But thank you all, because for what you do, you keep the lights on for the rest of us. Aside from that, guys, last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got here is all about staying informed. We're not trying to change anybody's minds. We're not trying to influence opinion. We are simply giving you the facts and allowing you to make up your own mind, because we do a lot better as a society when we're properly informed. An uninformed society got us Trump. An informed society got us our first black Madam Vice President. And if we can convince Michelle Obama, our first woman black, our first Madam Black President. Here's hoping. Aside from that, guys, please be safe, because Mother Nature right now is playing tennis across the states. So please be safe, be careful, don't rush. And pretty much, guys, let's take care of each other and we'll get all through this.